Where we have gone. And we've all gone to different parts of the world. I myself, I've covered, in my work as a scientist with a university, I do research projects that take me to states of the former Soviet Union. So I'm going into some countries that you probably may not have heard of. You may not even know where they are on the map. But if you've heard of Iran and Afghanistan, you're really close. And we also have Kitwana. That's me. He's from Switzerland, and he will tell you about what it's like to actually be a public fursuiter, in Switzerland and working with the Swiss people in that part of the world. We have Tod Puppy. She has recently gotten back from doing a mission trip to Guatemala, where she has worked with children in the slums of Guatemala while wearing Tod Puppy here, which should be very fascinating to think about. Many of us, we have these wonderful characters that we can share with our world and our community, and it might not occur to us that you can take that magic and you can combine it with your career, or you can combine it with something like missions, and you can actually add those smiles on the kids' faces all around the world, not just here in the United States. And lastly, we have Nightdragon. Nightdragon is going to tell you what it's like to be in Asia, specifically places like Singapore. And so what we're going to try to do is try to compare and contrast some of the cultural differences that you see, because you get different reactions from different people in the different cultures. Some of them are a bit more forward, some are a little more conservative. Some of them, they treat you like you're a slice of Disney. Others are left puzzled. So we're going to discuss some of that, and we'll have a question and answer. Hopefully at the end, we'll have some time for Q&A if you've got questions about this. So without further ado, I think I will introduce you to Kitwana, and he's going to start our presentation and tell you more about what it's like to be a fursuiter in Switzerland. Thank you.
Well, good morning everyone. For those of you who do not know me yet, I am Kitwana Lion, born, raised and living in Switzerland. And good to see you all here. In this panel I will be telling some of my public fursuiting experiences, and I can compare quite a lot to the US, as I've done also some public fursuiting outings over here. It's some outings down in Los Angeles County as well as here in downtown Seattle last year, so I think I can compare quite a bit. First, let's take a look where Switzerland is located. It's a completely landlocked little country in the center of Europe, surrounded by France, Germany, Austria, and Italy. Do not confuse it with Sweden, that's not the same. Many make that mistake for whatever reason. Sweden would be another 1,000 miles to the north of Switzerland. So Switzerland is a very small but very wealthy country. Without going too much into politics, I can tell that our standard of living is very high. The social security system and the healthcare system is world class. That's good for me as a Swiss, but it does have one little disadvantage, and that means charity events play a less important role than they do over here. When virtually everyone is taken care of by the social welfare system, then of course that plays a less important role. On top of that, our furry fandom in Switzerland is very small. In a country of 8.4 million residents, there's less than 200 active furries, and out of those 200, only a fraction are fursuiters. So to get our fair share of public fursuiting, what we will do is we would gather everyone on a Saturday, and then we take it to the streets of our downtown areas, which are much contrary to here, are very walkable. And remember, in Switzerland, stores are still closed on Sundays. So on Sundays, there's nothing going on. It's very boring. That's why we always do it on a Saturday when everyone is doing the shopping, so to make sure we get our maximum exposure and as many interactions as possible. And the main public fursuiting event that we are currently holding among the Swiss furs is what you see here. 4 times a year in our capital city of Bern. There's a huge pedestrian zone, as you can see. It's only a public transit running through it. You can see the streetcar tracks, and there's also buses, but otherwise it's a pedestrian zone, and lined by shops to the left and right. And it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so it's very beautiful, very old, many centuries old, but it's the perfect spot to do public fursuiting. It means cities, as I said, the cities are very walkable. It's much less of a car-centric culture. People take public transit or they walk in the big cities. That gives us fantastic interaction opportunities. It's literally at every step and every corner we take, there's people just waiting for us. And just under 1/3 of the current Swiss population was not born in Switzerland. So it makes for quite a multicultural experience. But speaking of different cultures, the Swiss mentality is often described as very calm, laid back, pragmatic and discreet. I think it's definitely true for many Swiss. Of course there are always exceptions from this rule, but we're just not as outgoing as, say, the Germans or even Americans, in my opinion, are far more outgoing, far more enthusiastic, and compared to my fellow countrymen. Did you know there's 4 official languages in Switzerland? On a very tiny space. So that's another contributor to being in very multicultural. The Waltzest is my native language, which is Swiss German. It's different from the German what they speak in Germany. We understand the Germans basically, but the Germans cannot understand us. Because Swiss German is a spoken language only. We write in standard German, but we speak in Swiss German. It's very unique in the world. But English is not one of our official languages, but still most people in Switzerland can understand English fairly well, and we learn it as kids in nowadays, even in elementary school. When I went to school, we had to take English in high school. It was mandatory. Besides that, people young and old can enjoy our performances equally. And even though I do have to say, my most favorite thing while public fursuiting is when I can get the smile out of a child. Interacting with a child is definitely, it's the most magical thing. And we've been talking about different cultures and mentalities, and one of the main differences compared to the US is that Switzerland has virtually no mascotting culture. Our schools do not have mascots, and only very few sports teams do have a mascot as a costumed character. That means that hardly any Swiss have interacted with the mascot before. That's only something they would probably know from a Disney theme park, but of course it's not something that's common in Switzerland. One reaction that we frequently get when we are on the streets, people ask us, well, what's this about? What's this all about? And many get the idea that we must be something political, like a political group, because Switzerland, as you may know, is a direct democracy, which again is worldwide unique. We can take part in public votes in the elections several times a year. So people think, well, it must be something political. Basically in Switzerland, everyone can challenge an existing law or incorporate a new law by collecting signatures on the street by the public. So there's always many groups out collecting signatures for some kind of a referendum or whatever, which they will get to vote eventually on. And when we tell them that, well, it's nothing political, we don't do this for money and it's just our hobby, we just do this for fun, they can't believe it, that someone would do this just for the fun of it. So now you see that our culture and mentality might be a bit different from the US. We have things that are in common. On one hand, so we are Western civilization and culture, and like our billboard charts are dominated by American music. Kids grow up with Disney characters and all that. We get all the American TV series, we have Netflix too, and Swiss TV news also focus a lot on what's going on in the US. But regardless of that, we do have some common things when it comes to public fursuiting too, and that is every child knows what a high five is. A hug is universal language. Everyone knows what a hug means, and that's no different to the US. I have been identified by some kids as Lion King before. I'm not sure why, but it seems well. But I'm just a friendly, huggable lion to most people in Switzerland. Some kids are scared and some like me a lot, and I would say about 80 to 90% of the kids, they really love us and they like interacting with us. And the fact that everyone nowadays has a smartphone in their pockets, that helps interacting with the people. Now, back to Swiss culture. You've heard before that public transit is a big thing in our country, is basically part of our culture. In big cities, like 40% of the people do not own a car at all. Some of them do not even have a driving license, like myself. I live in an urban area that's just fine. I get wherever I need to go with public transit, even to the rural parts. It's absolutely no problem. And when we do have our public fursuiting meetings, we always meet up near a train station, and because most of us arrive by public transit, we take our suits in the suitcases and take the train to wherever we need to go. But there's one thing that's a big no-go: do not take public transit while in costume. because they are going to throw you out. But, or at least to make sure in advance with the train or bus company that it's okay to do a public fursuiting stunt on board a bus or train, but usually this is prohibited. Unless, you can see me riding here in a public transit bus in Switzerland, unless it's carnival time. If you happen to find yourself in one of the Swiss cities that is Catholic, with a Catholic majority, then these cities do celebrate carnival. It's something similar like they do down in Brazil with big colorful parades to chase the ghost of winter away, and everyone is dressed up, kids and adults. And, it's usually in February, so that means temperatures will be pretty favorable for public fursuiting. It's around freezing level or slightly above, so makes it very comfortable. And during that time, it's totally fine to take public transit in Suit. I usually ride the bus to downtown from my apartment. I've got the bus right outside my door every 7 minutes, and it's totally no problem. Everyone will accept that. So what also helps is that Switzerland is a very peaceful country. The crime rate is much lower compared to many areas over here, and that definitely helps feeling safe. So. Another thing is that Switzerland still largely separates, unfortunately I have to say, special needs kids and even quite a few adults by putting them into special institutions where they go to school, get their education, and eventually find a place to live or even work separate from the open job market. That's where we still have a long way to go to properly integrate these people. I have a feeling that in the US, people with disabilities are far more out in the public and integrated. So I myself have a job at a special education facility in Switzerland. I have an office job with me being special needs myself. And I have fursuited there before, and I can tell it's the special needs kids are a very thankful audience, and it's the most magical thing when you can spread the magic to those who really need it and those who really appreciate it. It's the most beautiful thing. But it was at my workplace where I had one of my very favorite moments in my public fursuiting career in Switzerland. There was this girl, which you can see right there. She was in a wheelchair along with her mother. And I could see from my fursuit that her muscle cramps were giving her a very hard time, but as soon as she saw me, she reached out for me and demanded to be taken out of her wheelchair and to interact with me. And before her mother was able to shove her into my arms, I pointed downwards and told the mother that she should put her child down onto the floor to make it a safer experience. And that's what she did. And the moment she sat onto my lap, she totally relaxed and became a whole different child. And she even gave me a smile. It might be her first smile of the day. And I took all my time for her. We sat for several minutes and played with each other. And I really teared up inside my seat. I had a very hard time not to cry out loud. It was so emotional for me, being able to completely gain that child's attention and play with her. I know these kids have to go through so much crap every day, and I think this was a moment she will remember for a long time. Later that day, one of those special needs kids had observed me for a long time, and as we are done, one of our handlers, our spotters, handed me this piece of so-called fan art over to me. And this piece of paper is the bottom line, marks the bottom line of the message I want to deliver. We really can make a difference with everyone, with what we do, with our passion, with our colorful costumes. And it's why I don't mind traveling like 4,000 miles over here and do the same here, no matter what country we're in. This is something universal. We're really something magical for many people, especially the kids. And that's my message. Now I'm going to hand you over to Sarah, and we travel a couple dozen miles to the west, to Latin America, to Guatemala, and I cannot wait to hear what you have to say about your experience. Sarah, come on.
Hello, my name is Sarah, but I'm more commonly known as Tod Puppy among the fursuiting community. Last June, I traveled to Guatemala for a mission trip. I brought my fursuit, Tod Puppy, to spread joy to the children at a school called Mi Refugio, which means My Refuge in English. The school is for children in preschool through 9th grade, and is especially for those who cannot go to school unless it is free. Even public schools in Guatemala come with tuition fees, which is very unfortunate. This school provides education, uniforms, and even medical care for free. Now, you all might be thinking, why did this girl go to Guatemala with her huge dog costume? The beautiful and humbling landscapes. This was in Guatemala City, in Zone 7. It's one of the extremely impoverished areas near the city dump, where Mi Refugio first opened its doors. About 25 years ago, children and their families lived and worked inside the dump. Conditions were unbelievably filthy and unsanitary. Now people are not allowed to come through the dump unless they are official workers. There's even a wall that borders around the dump, which is quite large. And if somebody is caught taking photos of even the wall, their camera can get confiscated. That's what we were told while we were on the bus. They said, don't take pictures of the dump, or else the police are gonna come and confiscate your phone or your camera. That was kind of interesting. And then this is the Mi Refugio campus. This is where it's located today, in the beautiful mountains of San Juan, Zacatecas. I'm not sure if I said that right, but we'll see. The children at the school come from both the neighborhoods in Zone 7 and the surrounding villages near the school. The children in Zone 7 take the school bus to and from San Juan every day. Because traffic gets to be quite terrible as the day goes on, children must be at the bus stop at 5:30 each morning. The drive can range from an hour to an hour and a half, from an hour and a half to almost 2 hours. But for these kids, it is worth it. They get an education, medical care, and other amenities for free. I also went for the sake of the children. After many months of convincing my parents that I knew what I was doing and that I would be safe there, they finally approved. Clowns, and especially mascot performers and fursuiters, are not common in Guatemala, especially where the poverty is dense and resources are scarce. So I wanted to bring the magic of fursuiting to a place where it isn't commonly found. These are some of the kids that I got to know over the week. They were really cute and I loved them. They were adorable. And how was I allowed to go? There was a lot of planning and approval involved. I first had to email and call the secretary/treasurer of the school. I showed him a photo of my costume, along with photos of me interacting with children, and explained what I did exactly. Instead of saying I was a fursuiter, I said that I was a freelance mascot. This is essential, especially when dealing with any sort of organization that benefits children. People usually know what a mascot is, but might not exactly know what a fursuiter is. It's best to use easy to understand language. And how did I get the fursuit to Guatemala? Simply put, I left behind the legs and the feet. They were way too cumbersome. Instead, I wore a t-shirt with its arm sleeves, long pants with a hole for the tail, and sneakers to replace its feet. Sneakers worked out much better due to the dirty terrain anyway, because there's a lot of dirt and sand on the ground. It would have made my paws very dirty. And, okay, how did I get him on the plane and through customs? The process was actually quite simple. I put his tail, arm sleeves, and clothing into my suitcase and put his paws inside of his head. His paws are over there, I just stuffed them inside of his head over there. And I put those two items into a reusable shopping bag, the hands and the head into a shopping bag. I wore the sneakers onto the plane. You will need to put your fursuit through the X-ray machine and security check. I wasn't asked about my fursuit in customs, thank goodness, nor through security, but if they do ask, keep it short and sweet. No need to preach about how you'll bring joy to many children. They just need to do their job and you need to move on. This is what the packing looks like. Notice how I used a hard shell suitcase as opposed to something more flimsy. This is, in my opinion, very important. My head, thankfully, is small enough to be in a bag to go under the seat. I took advantage of this because putting him in the overhead bin would mean having to use a lot of soft padding in order to make sure nothing gets damaged. Turbulence happens and it sucks. And then, how does one keep safe while fursuiting in Guatemala? Always have a handler. This is especially important when out in the cities of Guatemala. The streets are cracked and they can be nothing more than dirt at times, and there are quite a few places where the elevation of the sidewalk changes. There are cars and trucks with drivers who literally just come out of nowhere, and it can be very dangerous without a second set of eyes and ears. I almost tripped and fell at least 5 times, not because my handler was bad, but because of the terrain. This is a street view. I copy and pasted a street view from the town that I was in, and then I put that's how it would look in a fursuit, because you have tunnel vision and then you can kind of see out of the mouth of them, but it's not very easy to see. And how did they react? As I was told by the supervisor of the school, there would be a huge chance that most of the kids would be afraid. But to my surprise, they all adored Tod. I had absolutely no crying at all. They all wanted to hug and cling on to him and pet his friend. It was really cute. The kid hugging me over there, that's Osvaldo. He was my best friend. All throughout, he'd come up to me, he would take my hand and say, come here, I want to show you my friends, except in Spanish. We'd get on the bus every afternoon. He'd try to take me back with him to Guatemala City, but it's way too hot, so I just couldn't, unfortunately. One child even drew me a picture. This was drawn by a little boy named Edwin. Very similarly to what Kitwana said, the supervisor of the program, she handed me over this drawing, and the kid was right there with her. She said, "Oh, look what Edwin drew you," and I was like, you know, the whole charade thing, because I couldn't talk. I was in costume. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cute, that sort of thing. This really was a moving experience, and it has inspired me to plan even more trips to other places around the world. For example, to further explore the world of Tod Puppy, I will be applying to a service learning trip with a group from my college to Jamaica. We will be staying at the Galena Breeze Hotel in St. Mary's. Although it is a medical mission, there are also opportunities to volunteer at schools, orphanages, and nursing homes. I want to take advantage of this opportunity with Tod Puppy. Wish me luck. Now, without further ado, here's an awesome fursuiter who does work in Southeast Asia, introducing Nightdragon.
Right there over spacebar.
Oh, space. Okay, cool. So yeah, I'm Nightdragon, and I'm originally from Singapore, and I'll point to that in a moment where that is. And I'll just start with an introduction about like mascots in Southeast Asia. Are basically associated with products, promotions, events, organizations. So this picture is the mascots from the Singapore Youth Olympic Games. Yep. So, but basically you don't really have mascots for like schools or like sports teams. So that's like different from like over here. Exception maybe would be like Japan, because Japan has mascots for like every single thing, but Japan is a bit further up. So where I'm from, Singapore, it's that tiny little dot at the bottom of Malaysia. Sounds similar to Switzerland, as Kitwana has talked about. We are also we're like a single island nation basically. So we are like just one city on an island like surrounded by water. So although there's a bridge to Malaysia, but yeah. And basically our population like on this tiny little island is around 6 million around there, and they actually want to increase it. I don't know how, but it's getting really like crowded, and I think I would say that Singapore is a bit more comparable to Hong Kong in terms of like living costs and living standards. Okay, for a lot of Southeast Asia, they basically have like no preconceptions of what the fandom is, but the thing that will be most recognized is cosplay, because cosplay sort of originated from like Japan and such. So if we do like go and like fursuit around various places, people will usually, the first thing people will always say is, oh, cosplay. So, and this helps because cosplay has been promoted very positively as an arts and culture scene in a lot of places in Southeast Asia. For example, like I can specifically say Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia. And so when we do have like fursuiting meets over in our Singapore community, we tend to do it like at cosplay events or specific events. And to go on a bit on the Singapore community, I think we've got around 50-ish active members, with some like outliers that pop in and out from time to time. I think for fursuiters it's increasing actually. When we started it was just 2, and we are going up to like 11 or 12 now maybe. Okay. So what kind of events do we have that we can actually like fursuit at? Okay, Halloween. Halloween is pretty much a very like Western thing, but Singapore, always an Asian country, is very urbanized and industrialized and very international, because Singapore is like a major port and a major shipping route. So Halloween in Singapore is very, I would say, commercialized. The nightclubs make use of it to promote Halloween raves. The shopping malls will promote Halloween events. Various things like bowling alleys, they'll promote Halloween bowling and put up all the decorations. And so we make use of that. This bottom right picture from your point of view is a shopping mall. Normally you wouldn't be able to go into shopping malls with a mask on, because they are technically privately owned. So you would have to get permission prior to that normally. But for Halloween, they sort of like relax it and encourage everyone to come in costume. And so we make use of it. And the other photos are one of the neighborhoods in Singapore. So it happens that this neighborhood is particularly famous for having a lot of American expatriates, because the Singapore American School is over there. So they actually like do celebrate Halloween in a more style similar to over here. And yeah, we basically head over to the neighborhood and Fursuit. So there are some individual pictures I've gotten up there of myself in suit. And over here at the bottom left is like the kind of crowd you get. You can see it's pretty massive. We are actually surrounded by a lot more people. The photographer was like standing like almost at the front of the crowd. So what you can't see is that there's actually way more people behind the photographer. So Singapore also has various arts festivals. The thing about Singapore is that the arts, when Singapore first became independent, they focused so much on the math and sciences. They didn't really promote the art. The art scenes got very left behind. So I guess in recent days or recent years, the government has started to recognize it and started to try and promote it a little bit more. So they come up with a lot of like arts festivals. These are usually like sponsored by various organizations. So generally we have to get like written permission, so we'll like contact the organizers and then say, okay, we can bring some like costume characters. Same thing, we do describe them as mascots as well, because that term is much better known than fursuiters. So usually we get connections through like members of our community where they have like professional connections to these organizations, and they write in or they talk to the organizers and let us bring in our fursuits and like fursuit there. So yeah, these photos are various events in Singapore, and this is these like fursuiters are some of the fursuiters in Singapore that obviously some of these pictures were taken like after I left, so I'm not in them, but you can see I'm like waving over there. So what's the thing about like Singapore and a lot of these other Southeast Asian countries? Oh, why is it out of the screen? Oh yeah, okay. But anyway, because we are very close to the equator, our country is like it's basically tropical weather all year round, and it's not like summer heat, it's high humidity. So because of this, we sweat a lot and you're sticky because it's not dry heat, it's really humid. So because of this, there's usually not much enthusiasm for outdoors fursuit walks. But we still do like manage it. Like usually have to set up something like we'll base out of like say there's a cosplay convention. We'll like set up like sort of like a camp there, and we go for the walk like outside of the building where the convention is taking place, because most of the buildings in Singapore are air conditioned. So that serves as like a rest stop to like cool off. And same thing, if you're going like public suiting, you definitely want handlers. And at these like cosplay events and such, you're definitely better off. You generally don't get the trouble for most part, because Singapore is like really, really safe. In fact, Singapore is like so safe, they have to keep putting up all the signs that say low crime doesn't mean no crime. People will do really stupid things like, in the food courts, they'll just leave their phone on the table and go off to buy food. I'm serious, people leave their like work lanyards, work key cards on the table and just walk off. And it's like, I've seen people leave laptops on the table in the food court unattended and walk off, and no one takes them. Oh yes, this photo here on the right is one of the pretty famous locations in Singapore. It's called the Marina Barrage. It's basically what they call reclaimed land. So it means they dumped a whole bunch of like soil and stuff and created an artificial extension of the land, because land space in Singapore is so limited. So this recreational park was built on reclaimed land basically, and these are some like teenagers taking selfies with me, and that building in the background, yeah, that building that looks like a giant boat is this photo that you may see in some like stock photos of that pool, that swimming pool right on top of a building. Yeah, that's that building that looks like a boat. I can tell you, they make this photo look really nice. You know, like, oh, it's the pool overlooking the entire cityscape. Actually, it's not true. There's a balcony below. Come on, you know, safety issues. They're not that stupid. They don't want to be liable. But yeah, you know, as a photographer myself, it's creative editing, creative angles. Okay, so there's no like law against like, you know, wearing masks or wearing costumes in outdoors areas, basically public areas. Because as I said, shopping malls are private spaces, so you can't do that. But basically outdoors, parks, that's free reign basically. So in general, I cannot speak for every single Asian country, but places like Singapore, where we have a majority like a Chinese descent population. This like Chinese Asian culture is generally pretty reserved. So people tend to be pretty shy. One things that really surprised me when I first came over here was like, you know, you can be at the bus stop and some stranger will start a random like small talk, casual chat with you, or that will never happen in like Asian cultures. Everyone just stands there. The phone, you know, try to ignore everybody else. You only ever talk to strangers if you need something like what's the time or something like that. So yeah, most people would be pretty shy to like approach you. You see, I'm like walking there, crossing the street, and everyone is just like a lot of batting an eye, just like ignoring me and such. So that's the reaction. Either like if they don't want to interact with you, they'll just like ignore you and just like don't walk past you as if you weren't even there. Yeah, they're not being rude. It's just how the culture is over there. If they want to approach you, they'll tend to do it like slowly. They tend to do it slowly, a bit shyly, and most of the time. Basically, they will want to just take photos. That's the big part, you know, Asians. Yeah. So it's mostly photos, selfies, or take a photo with me, and then I'll pass the camera to your friend, pass the camera to your husband or wife or whatever, and okay, switch around thing. And also like basically for a lot of Asian cultures, actually, you don't really like go and. They won't offer to like hug you for most part, even if you're in a mascot, costume, pursuit, because like hugging there is pretty much for like people you know very well or family members. You don't just go and like offer to hug strangers like at your first meeting. So that's again that's another cultural thing. So it's not that they are being rude or anything. But of course, you can everyone over there, they still know about you know, high fives, handshakes and such. So like this one, that photo up there was some like actually there were some international firsts that came over. They actually came over from Europe. Below here is me actually walking in the central business district in Singapore. And these are on Sentosa Island, which is a small like mini island of Singapore. It's famous for being a place where the super rich live because you need to be really rich to afford a property there. But that's also where Universal Studios Singapore is. So that's the other place that you know you would see mascots or costume characters at Universal Studios Singapore. And this island was like it was basically my birthday, so I went. I got in contact with this company that ran a zip line place. I did zip lining in my Fursuit, and this was when I landed, and I drew a huge crowd because I was like the only like Fursuiter there. And so yeah, the kids were really happy. So you can sort of see from the photo, you know, they're like a bit, the body language is a bit, shy, a bit like unsure. But I've got enough fursuiting experience that I just like the rules. If you've gone to other panels where they talk about how to fursuit the public, don't like run up to them, approach slowly, like lower yourself, especially with kids, try and encourage them, and yeah, they will come over in the end. But what's important is direction is almost entirely positive. So you don't really get like people like trying to roughhouse you for most part, or like throwing snide remarks at you, that sort of things. It's definitely been a great experience, and these are a couple of my favorite photos. That one with the little kid that was a little shy at first, but I managed to get down and she went to like pet the dragon. They were calling me toothless, but yeah, I guess I'll accept that. Oh yeah, this was the bunch of Japanese tourists. Like I said, Japan, they have tons of mascots everywhere, and I just surprised them because they were speaking Japanese, and I replied to them because I can speak Japanese as well. So, all right, so that's my part. I'll head over to Tycho now, and.
We're running a little low on time here, so I'll try to make my last part real quick. And I gotta reach my slides. Just want to move over a little bit. So, I call this how to combine your professional career with a passion for fursuiting. I actually sort of fell into this. I've taken my costume. I work at Michigan State University. I'm a research engineer for the seismic department there. And so, it takes us to places all around through states of the former Soviet Union. That's our study area. Those are where we've had partnerships since 1990 here at Michigan State. So we get to travel to different places around Russia, from the Far East, all the way across the time zones to places as far as Ukraine. Now we're working in the southern parts of what used to be the Soviet Union, in the Stan. Stan means the land of. So when I say Kazakhstan, it's the land of the Kazakh people, or Tajikistan is the land of the Tajiks. And each country is very unique and different with a different culture. And so because we'll work with those seismic networks in those areas, I'll bring Tycho with me on some of these trips. And I've hopelessly typecast myself now, because when we go to conferences, we work with the Russian scientists, they're all expecting Tycho to come along. And so, I had let's see if I can. So actually, they're all expecting Tycho. In fact, last time I was in Tajikistan, the director of the national network, he says, "Where's Tycho?" And I said, "I couldn't fit him in my luggage. I had all the scientific equipment." And they're like, "Oh no, you got to bring it. You got to bring it." And so they want me next time I go to Tajikistan. We'll probably be in the downtown, the city center, working with, of course, all the Tajik staff and their families, and we'll go to the Tajik center of Dushanbe and do some fursuiting. So I bring Tycho with me. He goes in the carry-on luggage. Luckily, he's pretty wash and wear, so I can put him in carry-on if I need to. I have lost him twice in the international luggage. Never go through Charles de Gaulle Airport in France. They have a really good way of losing your luggage, and then they don't tell you where they put it for about 5 days. So, where have I suited here? And this is different places. I've been to. I've worn my costume in Vienna, Austria. I have taken it to a conference and walked through the countrysides of Armenia. I've been to the shore of the Caspian Sea in Baku, Azerbaijan, about 100 miles north of Iran. And I've also been to Almaty, Kazakhstan, which is where we do a lot of our work. That's sort of our base operation. We travel around through Central Asia. We usually fly into Almaty first. And then Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. I'm going to highlight each of these countries a little bit. And lastly, Istanbul, Turkey, which this was just actually an 18-hour trip I made. We had a couple of furries on the site called Fur Affinity that are Turkish furs. and the expatriates, they live outside of Turkey. But I had said, yeah, I'm going to be going to Turkey. One of the guys approached me online. He says, oh, please, you got to go do something in Turkey. You got to be in Istanbul, and if you bring your costume, you must do this. I said, I'll try. So we had an 18-hour layover, and so we did 18 hours, and it was actually 2 hours of fursuiting, and it was intense, and I'll tell you about that. So when you're preparing for your suit, there's one thing you got to do. You got to make sure that you stay hydrated, of course, like everything else. And you don't really know what to expect, because each of these countries, people are slightly different in terms of how they react around you. And this was Armenia. This was a conference I went to. It was a scientific conference. Tycho got lost for 5 days. I had gotten ill. I actually had gotten food poisoning. So when I went down to Tycho, I was recovering. They had just delivered my luggage. And we have an annual conference with Russian scientists from all over the world. And they come and we meet each country. We always go to a different country every year. And this year was in Armenia back in 2014. And so I put Tycho on, and we have an annual, they actually have a soccer tournament. So all the scientists, they all beat each other up on the field. And so what we did is I became the mascot for the conference that year. And so we call it the talisman. Mascot gets translated into a Russian word that actually more means talisman, or representative of. So I became the representative for the Geophysical Science, Russian Academy of Sciences, and for that year, and we just had a blast. And I got to work with lots of the Armenians. The Armenians thought it was fun. All the whole staff, everybody wanted pictures, of course. And they were more forward. They had, the guys especially, the men all had ideas about how they wanted you to pose for them. And they would tell you, they said, pose like this, pose like this, put this in your mouth. Grab me like this. And so they had ideas of what they wanted to do. I think it's probably because they do have some concept of mascots, and then how mascots sort of, they're entertained, so they were really looking forward to it. But they were very, they were polite about it and stuff. But they were definitely knew what they wanted. One of the other spots that I go is Almaty, Kazakhstan. It's located just on the edge of China. So we're a couple hundred miles away from the western edge of China when we're in Kazakhstan. And Kazakhstan is a multicultural country that's made up of Russians and as well as native Kazakhs. And these are people that are descendants of Genghis Khan. So horses and the nomadic culture are all part of their cultural heritage. And so it's really neat to meet the people there. You'll sometimes meet people that are more Chinese, but they're definitely Asians, and they're friendly. It's not really a Muslim country. I'd say it's about 70% Muslim. There's still quite a bit of Russian Orthodox you'll find in Almaty as well. And the area that I'm pursuing in when I'm there is one of the more affluent areas of Kazakhstan. It's right down the street from where the Prime Minister's house is. So you'll see these Mercedes vans driving back and forth and up and down the street in front of the Kazakhstan sanatorium where I stay, which is a health club. And the price is modest, and they're friendly, and they know us there. And so at the health club, they have a health center with a weight room, and they've got a place for the kids to stay. And I was here on this trip solo, and I don't speak a lot of Russian, just a few words, and they don't speak any English, except for the director of the health center. So I approached her and I said, can I bring my Tycho Aussie in sometime and entertain? And she says, oh, okay. So she had told her staff about this American's bringing a costume, and so in I go, and they started. The kids just loved it, and the staff thought it was funny, but they didn't really know what to make of it, really. And so, but one young man, he kind of grabbed me by the paw and kind of led me through the whole place, and we actually ended up in the daycare center here, and kids here, they had never seen anything like this ever, never. And so they surrounded me, and they poked me, and they prodded me, and they pulled on me, and they actually grabbed my sleeve, and they didn't want to let go. They grabbed my sleeve, and they pulled back the fur to see if I actually had human skin. They want to make sure I was very real, and they want to look in the mouth, you know, they're like, ah, I see that. You know? And so I just let them do that, you know. They just really wanted to satisfy their curiosity. And then once they got that satisfied, they got down to the business of play. And I had some kids trying to make me do tricks. And the poor lady right here, maybe you can see her in the background. Her back is turned, and she has like a beige blazer. That's the teacher, and she was completely aghast because total pandemonium broke out, and she just lost control of her class while I was there. And then the one staff member who was there and smiling the whole time and taking pictures for me, and she's just, I told her to please apologize to that teacher for disrupting her class. And here's your quintessential look of a Russian when you approach them as a fursuiter. You know, and she's humored by this, but she's put on this real deadpan look on her face. She's going with it, but she's like, boy, I hope this doesn't end up on YouTube or something. So one of the other conferences that we've gone is a place called Baku, Azerbaijan. I don't know if anybody has anyone ever heard of the city before? Baku? Yeah, Baku is also one of a very affluent city, right on the edge of the Caspian Sea. And Baku is very oil rich. In fact, 150 years ago, the first place that they commercially brought in crude oil was Baku. And they literally dug holes in the ground, and the oil would seep to the top, much like Jed Clampett's land in the Beverly Hillbillies. And so Baku at one point had half the world's oil output. And so even the smell in the air is full of diesel. And the beaches in Baku have the natural oil seeps, tar balls. So you can't walk around on the beach in a fursuit unless you want to do a lot of cleaning, as I found out. But we walked around Baku for about an hour or so. And this is the person that I was walking with. My handler is actually a colleague from Michigan State. And so he will take my camera and he'll make sure that I don't trip over things. And so I've got him to be my handler. And so we walked around for a little bit, and people were taking pictures, and the cars were stopping and causing traffic jams, and trying to take photos with their cell phones. And when we were done, we ended up back at the top of the hotel, and they had given us this really nice room that I guess Elton John had stayed in, and it came with the roof of the building as part of our hotel suite. And so we were up there taking pictures, and we heard screaming and shouting on the neighboring building, and the kids who had spread the word about this crazy dog walking around, they were climbing up onto the top of the steel roofs to try to get a better look. And so here's a picture of some kids all waving, going, hey, over here. And so that is Baku, Azerbaijan. It's also a place where you have the flame towers. These are buildings that are equipped with LEDs. They will put illustrations on the sides of the buildings, and the oil of Baku has driven a lot of wealth into the downtown areas of Baku. But once you move away from the front, then you find that there's still quite a bit of poverty, and there's a lot of oil there. It looks like something you might see from mid-oil fields of Texas from decades ago. Like I said, we went to Istanbul, which is located just outside over by Greece and Bulgaria, and this whole area is on the Black Sea. And Istanbul is what used to be called Constantinople, which was a city in 330 AD that was founded by Constantine as part of his relocated empire, Roman Empire. And Istanbul is jam full of culture. You've got the islands that will stand on the minarets, and they'll call to prayer on the speakers every few hours. We went there, right to the downtown area, Sultanahmet, as it's called, and just walk the streets. And Istanbul is very different than Azerbaijan or even Central Asia. The people here are so used to reaching out and engaging you. Istanbul is a very engaging society. They have a market here that goes back to the 1400s, and when you walk the market, if you've ever seen the movie Aladdin, the first scene is the man who's trying to call you over to take a look at his wares because he's trying to sell you stuff. That's based on Istanbul and culture. People will try to call you over, like, hey, come over here, spend your money with me. They will do that. And so when we were walking the streets in Istanbul, what we found is that I was being engaged, people were pouring out of their businesses, all men were pouring out of their businesses, trying to talk to you to come into their businesses to meet their customers. I had guys going, yo, come to my restaurant, I give you beer, I give you food, meet my customers. They were just like that, they wanted to grab you by the hand and walk you in. And so we ended up at the top of a place called Seven Hills, myself and Kevin, my colleague, and we took a couple of these pictures here. And this right here is, as you see in the background, this is the Blue Mosque, which is one of the most famous mosques in the world, in which they sing from the minarets. But if you turn around, you find this building here. This is the Hagia Sophia. This building built in 330 AD by Constantine. It was a Christian Orthodox church for 900 years until it was taken over and converted over to Islam. And at that point, it was converted into a mosque, and it was a mosque until the 1700s. Now it's an international museum for architecture. But we took this picture right at sunset. I've done a little bit of color saturation changes to this picture, but otherwise you're looking at a picture that isn't really actually photoshopped. You know, to look at the colors there. And then that is Istanbul, just a fantastic place. We had dinner with a carpet dealer who brought us in there and fed us tea and biscuits and stuff, and I got to surprise his brother. We played a joke on him. One place I really enjoy is Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. Bishkek is 93% mountains, very poor, very resource poor. They only have they don't actually have any oil or anything. So it's about $1,100 a year per capita is the income for people in Bishkek. And so we go to Bishkek and we work with their seismic networks, and I get to walk the streets there. And the people of Bishkek, which is 93% Muslim, very modest, moderate Muslim, they're very reserved. As you walk down the street, they'll sort of give you a nod. You might catch their eye, you might not. But once you start walking in a costume, their card goes way down, and they're looking for pictures. And so you will find Bishkek to be a very fantastic place. So I bet I'm going to have to end it because I see our panel has ended and we have people coming in. So thank you all for coming.